We'll call the meeting to order at 7:04 p.m. This is the April 18th meeting for the Town of Southampton Landmarks and Historic Districts Board. Present are board members Stephanie Davis, William Hine, Tim Ganettis, Jeff Gibbons, Vicky Kahn via Zoom, and Martha Green and Ed Wisnowski. Absent are Susan Sherry Clark and Barbara Roberts. This meeting is being conducted under town and New York State law providing for in-person and remote participation. Individuals may undertake remote participation by activating the Zoom links found on the published agenda and at the town clerk's meeting portal. Viewer-only observation is found by activating the live link at the top of the town clerk's portal page. The online participation is being moderated by CTV. For comment on a particular agenda item, please notify CTV via the chat function so that comment can be made or raise hands. Commentators will need to provide name, agency if relevant, and place of residence or business. So with that, I think we can proceed to the agenda, and the first item would be the approval of minutes, which Stephanie has circulated, and everyone has, I believe, received. Are there any comments or amendments to be made?
I haven't received any via email prior to the meeting either.
Okay, in the absence of any further comment, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. We have a number of guests present, and we might take up the agenda items that are associated with them first, if they didn't want to stay around for the next 3 hours of our meeting. So don't sweat it, it's not going to be 3 hours. So with that, why don't we take the first item of business, and that would be the certificate of appropriateness for the Bridgehampton Museum. And I would ask, since I have a formal association with the organization making the application, I will excuse myself in the matter of practice of board members for the town, and ask that Stephanie, would you moderate the discussion and the appropriate action that's to be taken?
I will be happy to.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like to be heard?
Yes, thank you. And I actually have a handout. Is that all right?
Absolutely.
Great. This is ready.
Thank you very much. I don't have a tissue, otherwise I'd help you.
It's just nice. Some people
I think it's the trees outside the
Oh, yeah,
entrance.
the trees,
I don't
too.
think it's.
As soon as I walked in the building, I had the
Fair.
same problem.
Really?
Yeah.
I've had the problem from the beginning of the week, last week.
Great, thank you very
I woke
much.
up with
Yep.
like a rock in my eye. I felt like it hasn't been much better since.
Hi, I'm Nina Deck. I'm the executive director of the Bridgehampton Museum. I know many of you. It's nice to see you. The sun is out while we're having this meeting, which is quite extraordinary. I'm here to apply on behalf of the Bridgehampton Museum for a certificate of appropriateness for actually 2 signs. So I want to amend the application and put that into the record.
2 signs.
2
okay.
signs. One is the sign that you have there, which is the top of your packet, which is the purple.
Yep.
The second is a parking correct, and the second is a parking sign that would go on Ocean Road to the south of the property, and the ordinance is written in such a manner that we're allowed to have a sign on both Montauk Highway and Ocean Road, so that we would do that. And may I just tell you a little bit quick background about how we got to this sign? I think that might be helpful for you in making this decision for us. First, I'd like to say that the purple that you're looking at here is actually lighter. It's not a lavender, but it is a bit lighter than how it's printing out. So when the sign comes, it will actually be lighter. Our logo, which is this part here, but actually is in the packet that I just gave to you, which is this, is our actual logo. I don't know, is that Vicki? I don't know, because it's
Can you see Vicki?
Can you see? So this is the actual logo. It was designed, and as well as the sign, by Jonathan Heffler. Some of you may know Jonathan. He's a local resident who lives in Bridgehampton. Jonathan Heffler is a font logo designer who has spent the greater part of his life, his entire career, creating fonts, including 2 that are named for him. Although don't check me on that. I know there's definitely 1, but I think there's 2. And almost every major corporation or sign that's associated with public signs or corporations and other matters have either been tweaked or designed by Jonathan. He is a giant in this particular world, and he is a lovely, gracious, generous man who has been working with us on this project for over a year. So we're very, very grateful for him, for his input and for his decision to help us in this manner. Mr. Heffler conducted a deep dive into the history of local and national signs and fonts and lettering when putting this font logo together and this sign together. And he was looking for commonalities, for common traits that existed in lettering in all sorts of different areas, including building signs, print, gravestones. So if you look actually in this packet, what he found is there are certain elements that are in many different types of signage, but here I've included 2 that are gravestones.
Corwith and Rogers.
Corwith and Rogers. But if you go to the 3rd page, there's a similarity with cars. And Bridgehampton is known for racing and has a racing background. So he was looking for some sort of thread that he could carry through. And this block lettering was created in the latter part of the 19th century, early, and used extensively then. And throughout the early part of the 20th century, we all think as a way to make signs and signage easier for the common person to read. If they could recognize an O or a certain letter in the same sort of lettering throughout different signs, they would have an easier time with that. And these traits in this lettering are in public signs, in gravestones, in print, in racing. So he looked sort of at a national spectrum, and then he looked locally, and then he also looked in the city. And this font that he came up with for us, which this logo he designed for us a little bit, uniquely for us, you'll notice has a little bit of a break in the straight of the letter, which is very similar to some of these gravestones that we have locally, but also things that are happening in New York. So the other thing he was thinking about, we were thinking about, and I put a map in there when we were talking about the Bridgehampton Museum and the Historical Society, is that it bookends the hamlet of Bridgehampton. So the Corwith House, of course, is on the west side of the hamlet, and the Rogers House, and the Rogers House is on the east side. So when one thinks about bookends, one could visualize a line. And that's how he came up with these lines. So it's a reference to Bridgehampton. It's an homage to lettering of the past. But it's also very modern. It looks and feels very modern. And that was the challenge, to move us forward as an organization, but to use traditional elements to do that. And I think he's done it quite well, quite frankly. I think it's quite beautiful. In this packet, and I'm just about finished, in this packet, I've included a couple of pages for you to see. The second page is what the sign originally looked like, but when we put it up on the front lawn, nobody could see it. So we went back to Jonathan, and he added the purple square at the front, which still sort of references that line to the right. The 3rd page, I'm sorry, guys, I'm going to do it. The 3rd page, not so much for the size of the signs, but to give you an idea of the shape. So the front sign will be a rectangle. The back sign will be parking. And Julie, I want to speak with you after, because there's something we might add to this. And we're in a zoned residential area, so we have to request a variance for this larger sign in the front. And the first step would be to come to you to ask for a certificate of appropriateness, as if you think it's appropriate for this house. This page here, this is the map. This just sort of references the idea that the hamlet is bookended by the museum. And then, lastly, I included some information that I included with the packet, which was why we're applying for this certificate, why this sign is meaningful. And then the very last page is the placement of the signs, which is about 20 feet from the fence in the front of the house. The variance is fine, the distance from the house from the fence is fine. It's far more than 20 feet, which is necessary. The red dots represent those signs, and the last page, of course, is Joseph Strassfield and Lynette Pintorro holding up the sign to give you a sense of what it might look like in that space. The purple of the sign is also meaningful. As you all know, purple is a color that in the Victorian era was often used in exterior paint and also interior decorating. This is a little bit darker, but we didn't want to go too light because a lighter purple can be, the reference to that is connected to other issues and other things, and we didn't want there to be any kind of we wanted it to be unique unto its own, really, quite frankly. And that's sort of it.
So the sign that's facing Montauk Highway, it's going to face Montauk Highway? It's not going to be perpendicular to the road, so you can read it from either side, or?
Well, we decided not to do a triangular sign. We thought it would be better to do, we thought it would be easier for the town to be happy. They would be happier if we did a straight sign in the front. Although we're open, honestly, if the town comes back and says we would prefer, of course we'll do whatever they'd like.
Yeah, I'm just thinking from a public readability. I don't believe there's a sidewalk on this side of the street. I don't know how much pedestrian traffic
There
you
is.
have.
There is
Oh,
a
is
sidewalk.
there? Okay.
There is, and there's a crosswalk right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're not allowed to put the sign to the west of the house, really, because there's a 50-foot radius that's required because it's an intersection.
Yeah.
So we wanted it to be connected to the house a little bit, so it's all the way to the right of the house,
Mhm.
the farthest gallery to the right in front of that. But the entire property, including the archive building, is owned by the town.
Mhm.
So it's a way to sort of bring that whole property together.
Okay.
And the way in which we're placing it, we were thinking about that. How could it be seen from both sides?
Yes.
It sort of works when cars are coming in both directions.
Okay. Yeah, I just from my own experience with the West Hampton Beach Historical Society Museum sign, we debated when we were putting up our sign whether to face the street, which also has a sidewalk on it, and we ended up opting to have it perpendicular to the street so it can be read by vehicles traveling both directions.
Yeah.
I think in our case, though, it's a much smaller street. The traffic is slower, and people can actually turn into our parking lot from that
Okay.
location. So the visibility from a vehicle is perhaps of more importance in that setting than it is perhaps in this setting.
I think it would be difficult, just the way in which, as you're saying, the road is placed with the traffic moving. I'm not certain that a perpendicular, we worked with that would be easily seen. I
Mhm.
think it would be missed. Maybe you'd sort of get it as you're going by. We wanted something that branded the building, that let after all of this time of restoration,
Yeah.
we wanted everyone who's going in front of that building to be able to know the name of that building.
Mhm.
That's what we were thinking.
Can I ask a question?
Please do.
I'm Martha Nina. Just to say, I live on Lumber Lane, so I drive by here every day, at least twice a day. I'm glad it's not perpendicular, because there aren't really any other perpendicular
Yeah.
signs.
Okay.
So my two questions are, have you thought about, why are you going in front of the house rather than just to the left of it in your picture? Because it's such a beautiful house, you're obstructing the
You mean
left side.
farther to the east of the house?
Yes, further toward the garden, so that you can see the house in its entirety. I don't know if that makes it less understandable that that's the house you're looking at. And when you talk about the bookends, is your intention to add a sign on the other end of the?
Yes.
where
A matching
Corwith
sign for the
House
Corwith
is?
House, exactly, with the
Exactly,
same
and-
logo and the same color signature.
Because the sign we have there now is, nobody sees it, you don't really realize where
Can't,
you
right,
are.
exactly. Yeah, it would be, it's a way to brand the two buildings and connect them. The challenge was, how do you connect two buildings that are on
Yeah.
either side of a hamlet? And how do you do that in a way that's historically relevant, but that also is inclusive, that sort of wraps its arms around the rest of the hamlet and sort of lets everybody know that this is an historic space in a way.
So, did you think about moving it so that it wasn't in front of the building?
No, we wanted to put it in front, I mean, we'll consider that, of course. The thought always was to put it in front of the building, because the property is large and there's another building to the right. That sign in front of the archive building has to come down. So, because it's considered one property. Because we're not currently stewarding that building, there might be some confusion with that. But we're open, if that's a recommendation, something to think about for sure.
Does anybody else have any questions, any observations? Vicki, did you have anything on this?
Can Vicki hear us?
Does she have sound?
I don't know.
Vicky?
Vicki, can you hear? Okay, you're muted, I think.
I'm okay.
Okay, good.
Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you.
Did you have any comments on the sign? Any observations?
No, I have nothing to add.
Okay, very good. Do we want to have any discussion about what's proposed here? Did you have anything further to add at
No,
this
I'm
point?
fine,
Okay.
and I just wanted to thank you for listening to me and
Absolutely.
and for assisting us with this.
Yeah.
This project, as you all know, predates me. Everyone in this room has been involved with the restoration of this house far longer than I have.
Mhm.
I really came in at 5 minutes to midnight on this clock, but we really wanted to create something that honors the past,
Mhm.
but moves sort of the discussion forward
Yeah.
in a way, and that's what we were thinking about.
Yeah, honestly, I see that there's a lot more thought been put into this sign than I would normally expect, an organization to do, and it shows. And I think one of the things that'd be very interesting is if you eventually have a little, I assume you have some brochures about the history of the building and all of that. It'd be nice to have somewhere in there a little bit of blurb about how this all came about, because otherwise people
Yeah.
wouldn't know.
We'd like him to do a talk if he's busy,
Mhm.
but that's something that we've been discussing,
Yeah.
absolutely, because we're a history museum, so we're dealing with material culture.
Yeah.
So we are telling stories through artifact and through visual material. And so everything that's in that house, everything that we present in exhibition, everything that we talk about in programming has meaning
Mhm.
and has resonance and has historical value to it. So of course the sign for us was, it was very important that we create something that came out of, it turned out to be a year-long discussion about the elements of this community that are appropriate and relevant to this
Yeah.
sign. So,
And will there be lighting?
I'm not
For the sign?
applying for lighting now because it's complicated, but yes, I would eventually like to add some downlighting to it.
Mhm.
I'd like it to be seen at night. But I think also our thought was to, as with the plantings, we're not really doing grass, we're doing chewing fescue. We're thinking about, how did people live in this house for the bulk of time that they lived in this house, and sort of a better lawns through chemistry is a relatively new thing, and most of the folks who lived there didn't have those types of lawns. And so how do you create an appropriate garden and plantings that are modern and sort of have a modern resonance to them, but also are historically relevant.
Mhm.
So I'd like to keep that sign, if we could, with some sort of downlighting that honors that, that isn't too flashy or loud.
Yeah, and if you wanted to come back in the future with a COA for that change,
I would do that.
yeah,
yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Yeah, you might want to live with the sign for a little bit. And
Exactly.
See how it works.
That's exactly it. I want to see if people are seeing it,
Mhm.
if they're understanding its, relevance. I mean, this is a fluid kind of a thing. History is a living thing. It's not stagnant. We're all living in history in this moment. And it's sort of a wave. We're all part of it. And let's see where it goes.
Sounds good. Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much.
The house is beautiful.
Come by.
I have.
Come by again. We're opening in June.
Then that's when I'll be
Rogers
by.
would be thrilled.
Green.
Because he was, he wasn't an architect trained, architect, but that's where he was coming from. And being a portrait artist, lines and all of that image would be very important to him, so.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Beautiful,
Great.
yeah.
Thank you.
Very
And
good.
I like the detail and going in, it's not just some font on the sign.
No, and I should say that the font for the sign also is Ideal Sans,
Mhm.
which is a licensed font which has been gifted to us.
Okay.
The Hefler font has been given to us. Oh, it's very exciting. And, Jonathan Hefler and his partner, the two of them, she's also quite wonderful, they have a really strong sense of community here.
Mhm.
They really love Bridgehampton, and they live very close to the house. They'll see this sign every day, as do you, Martha, and everybody else, and want to feel as though it speaks to them as well. So
Good.
couldn't ask for anything more. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for your time.
Hey, does anybody else have anything to add, comment on, et cetera?
It's just a shame it's obscuring the house, but I suppose people will see it if they're looking at the house, but it.
Put it too far away, it's gonna be
No,
like
this is what,
irrelevant.
I know, yes. At least it fits nicely in the left wing as opposed to.
Yeah,
Cutting
Right
it
in front
in
of the
half.
door.
yeah, it's,
And I'm glad it's not perpendicular to the house, it's sitting
yeah,
parallel.
and when you consider traveling by,
Yeah.
the only time it's really going to be in front where you see it on this is if you're right in the street, right there.
Yeah.
The further west you travel, it's not going to be in front of the house. And the further east you travel, by the same token, it will,
I like a bit of type,
It'll
so
move.
it's very attractive. It
Mhm.
doesn't bother me, it's just, I know the effort of the house.
Yeah.
And it's very grand.
yeah.
But I think it'll sit with Topping Rose's sign, which is important.
Background, so
it's Yeah. not
an abrasive background, it's sort of melt into the house.
Yeah. It will.
I think the only other thing I wanted to ask was about the posts that are planned for this. What are the posts going to be made out of?
It's going to be a composite material that looks like wood but doesn't melt in the rain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's also less expensive, and the footprint, quite frankly, is less for the environment.
Right, so basically like a vinyl post, or?
No, I think it's more like an MDF.
Okay.
It'll be some sort of a composite material.
Okay.
We're just figuring that out.
Yeah, they look to me like they're at least 4x4s on this.
The poles.
Yeah.
So we're taking that from the poles that we're using for the signs now. The height of it will be about 70 inches.
Okay.
We're suggesting that it be 44 inches off the ground, but the fence is high.
Mhm.
We want it to be seen.
Can you go to the podium?
Sorry.
Oh.
It'll be about 70 inches high, the top of
Top of
the
finial?
cap, right, the finial, and then, but it'll be very plain, very, very minimal. The sign itself will be about 42 to 44 inches off the ground,
Mhm.
because the fence is high,
Yeah.
and we want it to be seen.
How tall is the fence?
It's, oh gosh, I have those,
Just roughly.
it's taller than the other.
3.5
it's-
feet.
What is it?
About 3.5, I mean,
Oh,
I'm
ma-
guessing.
Yeah,
about
it's a
3.5
little, it's a little
feet.
taller actually than that.
Yeah,
4
I
feet.
think
Yeah,
it's
it's about
more
4
like
feet.
4.5, I think,
Yeah,
from what
it's
I
a-
remember.
And it has taller bits
Yeah,
to
it
it.
has
Actually,
bits.
I've done all of that. I should have brought that with me, but I might actually have that on my computer.
It's on the rendering is on your
That's-
application.
That's my terrible rendering, but yes. That's why I included in the packet a photo of Joseph and Lynette
Yeah.
holding the demo of the sign that we had originally made. And as you can see, you can't see it without the color.
Question on the finials. I mean, right now you have sort of the urn shaped finials on your fence. Had you thought to do the same sort of finials on the posts or the
Yeah.
sign?
I think the decision was not to be fancy there, to allow the sign to be the star of that particular space and to not be too busy. You've got the finials on the sign itself, the house is the star of that whole thing. You know, the finial for the sign is the least important, I think, in terms of, I just don't want, I think the idea was not to draw the eye there.
To me, it adds another design element here, because you've got the urn finials on the fence, you have your top of your columns, the scroll thingies on there,
Yeah,
and then you have yet another design on the post for the sign. If you want to keep it plain, and I think that would probably read better here, because your sign is very rectangular, it speaks very squarely there, I would opt not even to have finials on those posts.
I think that's sort of where we're going.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
yeah, and that way you remove that distraction, that visual distraction, and you just leave the sign, and you're not trying, because it's not taking off any other design elements from the other things you already have here.
Yeah.
So-
In fact, that might be my addition, and I think Jonathan, the sign that he created and the artwork that he sent me, which is not appropriate for this, there was an internal sort of email. I think it was sort of flat at the top.
Flat, yeah.
Yeah,
Or I could even see it's just a slight slope to shed rainwater, but not
Exactly.
to have a fancy design feature. on
yeah, I
it.
think you're right about that.
That would be my suggestion for the post arrangement here, because the other is just, to me, too distracting. I don't know how anybody else
I
feels
agree.
about that.
Do you all, okay.
Less is more.
Oh, this is
Yeah,
a-
this
you've
is a
got-
finial
got
on
enough
this.
going
I was
on.
gonna
Yes,
say,
The sign should
these are-
speak-
this is the
be the
finial on the
thing that
existing
speaks, yeah.
fence, and then they've
Yeah.
got these things there, and then this is yet another,
It's too
I was
much.
just thinking that that was part of the sign.
no,
But it's
that's the finial
supposed to be
behind,
on.
yeah, it's a finial behind, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, you want to
Okay.
keep consistent with the other side of town anyway. So when that goes up and when the visitor, you want them all to be the same presumably.
Yeah.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
you're gonna
If they're
hallmark that
if you're
whole-
if you're
yeah.
bookmarking it, you want to.
Yeah. So that would be, from my perspective, the only change to make here would be to make the tops of those posts just plain and not decorative.
I think there would be full agreement with you from the board about that, so
Okay.
I don't think that would be an issue.
I agree with that.
You agree with that? Okay. Does somebody want to take a stab at formulating a resolution for this?
I could take a stab at it. So we're approving it
Yeah, we're
Or-
approving it as presented with a change
of no
of
finials.
the finials to a plain finial on the tops of the post for the sign.
And the second sign as well, would that be part of it as well?
Yeah, because you're asking for two signs here, and the application materials you presented tonight have two signs and two locations.
Yes.
And we don't have the rendering for the parking sign, but that's a pretty minor,
Should have it in the packet.
yeah, but not the one in place with the finial.
And will the parking sign be at the same height?
Probably, and I call it a hangman sign. It'll be a 2x2, so the restriction in that area, because it's residential, is a 2x2 sign.
Okay, yep,
So that's what it will be.
that's what you show?
Yeah.
And you're gonna have the same purple coloring
Yeah.
on that? I think, again, just
I
as-
believe. We may not, because the space is small.
Mhm.
We will have the logo, of course.
Yeah. Just gonna look at the map. My only objection as a driver is making sure that that sign is not placed where it obstructs the view of people exiting the parking lot.
It's on the south, we had placed it on the south side of the parking lot. It doesn't obstruct the building. The only way that it obstructs the view of the building is coming north on Ocean Road.
No, the view of the people driving out of the parking
Oh,
lot,
no.
looking both ways on Ocean
No,
Road.
it's recessed, so it's on the inside of the
Okay.
fence.
Yes, I see that, I see where it is,
There's
so.
a huge privet
Correct.
it'll be sitting against
Mhm.
that would obstruct your view
But
more
it's on
than
the
a
other
sign would
side
be.
of the.
Yes, it's on
yeah.
the south side of Ocean Road.
Correct.
It's on Ocean Road side.
Yes,
Yeah.
but on the south side of the
That's right.
driveway.
On the south side of the driveway and east of your fence.
Correct. It'll be set in, recessed.
All right. Is it actually gonna be visible then if it's behind the fence?
I think so, because it's white and the fence that's, sorry about my nose. The fence that's there is a natural fence. It's not the white fence, and I think it will stand out.
Okay.
But again, as we're saying, if it becomes an issue, we'll make a request for a change.
Okay. All right. So
So it's a hangman fence.
That's what
or
I'm calling
hangman
it.
sign, which is.
it comes up with a
Yes.
bar across and then the sign hangs.
That's
from it
correct.
and Whacks people in the head when the wind blows.
So,
Well,
Yes.
we'll fashion it so it doesn't do that.
That's,
so does that
just kidding.
face the road again, or is it to the side where you would see it?
It'll face, that will be perpendicular to the road.
Perpendicular to the
Okay.
road, yeah.
That's
So
a good
this one is
question.
gonna be like this, and this one's gonna be like that.
Yep.
Okay.
But it will be inside the fence.
Correct.
Right, yep, that's where it's shown. So both signs as presented, with the only change being the top of the finials for the sign out front, the top of the post.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
something we can pass?
Mhm.
You got that, Vicky? Do you have that, what we're talking about? You gonna be okay?
Couldn't hear what you just said.
Okay. What we're doing is putting together a resolution that would approve the two signs as presented tonight for the museum, with the only change being that the tops of the posts for the sign out front along Montauk Highway would be plain, some sort of squared off top rather than the current decorative finials that are shown there. That work for you?
Yes.
Okay. So if we're all fine with that, I'll put together some language that covers
Thank you.
that, and so we can submit that. Yeah, are we all in favor of that?
Yes?
Okay?
Should we,
I'll go tell Ed.
Yes, so I guess we have to move
Yeah.
this.
Yes.
Mhm.
So does somebody want to move this?
A motion to approve the two signs.
Okay,
Is that what we're doing?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
I can second.
You second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Got that done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is fabulous, thank you. And I invite you all to come. You know,
Yes.
we're opening in June, to come for a private tour.
I
Before
definitely
we
will
do,
come.
Please do.
I remember it in the good old days.
I remember the gas station.
yeah, the gas station.
Yes, the gas station.
Texaco station.
The asbestos floors and it's not good.
It was very sensitively placed. Right in
Well,
front.
it was at a key intersection right on Montauk Highway.
Sensitively placed.
Yes, okay. It's probably falling asleep out there.
Could be. She had to wake him up.
Are we finished with item number 1 from Bridgehampton?
We are finished with item number 1.
Okay, we can go to item number 2 of Bridgehampton, which is the Bridgehampton Historic District resolution. And do we have our video here? We are losing our display.
Should I do-
Is your laptop asleep?
I think it's on.
The little red light's on.
Maybe your laptop just went to sleep. No? Okay.
See if I need to reset it.
Ah, now the
Ah,
green light's
screen
on.
again. Okay, thanks. All these miracles. Suddenly, the robot comes out from behind the scene.
A very
Okay.
nice man.
Good. I did send out the draft of the application that itemized the properties for the Bridgehampton Historic District, Main Street, Bull's Head. And that coincides with our discussion from the March meeting of the review and design guidelines for the Bridgehampton Hamlet, Historic Hamlet, done by our town historian, Julie Green. And again, let me compliment you on a great job.
Yes.
This is a pioneer effort on behalf of the town of Southampton. And this path has not been traveled before by anybody in the town, so it's quite an accomplishment to get that package together and to have it advance further down the line to town board action. I don't know if anybody had any comments on the draft that was sent out. It itemized 98 properties in the Hamlet Center, running from the intersection of Ocean Road, Sag Harbor Turnpike, Lumber Lane, on the east end of the hamlet, to Snake Hollow Road and Hildreth Lane intersection with Montauk Highway on its west end. I'm not sure whether or not any comment on the draft resolution that was sent out.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't I read the resolution? I will move it, and the resolution, for the record, is on advancing the formation of a Bridgehampton Historic District. Whereas the Landmarks and Historic Districts Board has reviewed the structures and sites in the Bridgehampton Hamlet Center via prior surveys, reports, and information on their history. And whereas the Landmarks and Historic Districts Board finds a number of such structures are found to meet the criteria of designation as a landmark and are found in a distinct section of the town of Southampton, making them eligible under town code for designation by the town board as an historic district. And whereas the LHADB, Landmarks and Historic District Boards, also finds the structures and sites laid out in Bridgehampton's Historic Hamlet Review and Design Guidelines under the auspices of Julie Green, town historian, to be in a unique location, providing for established and familiar visual features of that Hamlet Center neighborhood. And whereas a proposed application prepared by the Landmarks and Historic Districts Board chairperson dated April 16th, 2023 has been presented for recommending to the town board the creation of an historic district for Bridgehampton. And whereas town code mandates the mission of the Landmarks and Historic Districts Board is to maintain the historic character of the town by promoting the preservation and protection of its historic landscapes, settings, sites, and structures. Now therefore be it resolved, the Landmarks and Historic District Board hereby moves the application as its own in conjunction with Bridgehampton's Historic Hamlet Review and Design Guidelines, determines the application to be complete, and approves its submission in an advisory report to the town board for the formation of such a district. That's the text of the resolution. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Jeff. Discussion further?
Nope. That's good.
No further discussion? Martha?
Sorry, on the resolution or on the properties that we're talking about landmarking? I just have a
On the
question.
resolution.
No, I
Okay.
have no questions on the resolution.
And by the way, I would remind you to kind of to be closer to the microphone on the
That's fine.
occasion of addressing comments.
Thank you, sir.
No further discussion? Then all those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you, and one further step
Amazing work.
in the progress. We have here also Julie Burmeister and Tom Watson. I don't know if you had been prepared to make any comments or provide any input tonight?
Just had one.
Okay, Tom.
Yeah, Tom Watson, Bridgehampton Civic Association. In one of your emails, you mentioned there could be co-applicants to the application.
Application can be made by anybody, joint parties, number of individuals.
So are you looking for co-applicants, or is it just going to be the board that's going to be the applicant?
If anybody else wants to join, they can sign on, provided, you know, they give their name and information and address.
Because I think the Civic would probably want to be a co-applicant, the Bridgehampton Civic Association.
As an individual or the Civic Association,
As an association.
well, an officer of the association would, if they would send a letter indicating they are
Okay.
in
That's what I
receipt
wanted
of
to
the
know.
application,
Right.
and they wish to be associated with petitioning the town board for that,
I mean,
yes.
do you think that would help in the effort? I
I,
guess-
well, I think it will help in the effort to
Okay.
have a sense that the community opinion
Right.
is there for having a historic district, because it's all been informally discussed
Right.
over a number of meetings over a number of
And
years.
then
So
when-
having an official
Yeah.
kind of commitment towards it would be, I
And
think,
when
helpful.
would you need that letter by? I mean, do you have a date when you plan on submitting this to the town board? And
Well, some of the, yeah, there's some further decisions with respect to the workload of the town board. There are public hearings that have to be held, there are mailings that have to go out. So it's not an immediate thing. I would expect that perhaps we're still a month away from
Okay,
getting something to the town board.
okay, because it's something our board would have to vote on, and our board meeting is next week.
Like
so-
everybody else.
So we can
Yeah.
vote on it then, and then get this little letter to you.
Yes,
within
that
a
sounds
I think
week
it
or
would
two.
be helpful.
Yeah,
The more the better.
definitely.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay. That was-
Very good.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Okay. With that, we can return to a normal agenda.
Can I just ask a very simple question about the properties that you've outlined? There's one lot that's a vacant, it says vacant, it belongs to the fire department. And what does that mean when you're landmarking it? Does that mean it has to stay vacant, or does that mean that it just applies under a different category?
Right, that's,
It's not
It's just-
checked, it's, the boxes aren't
Oh, I
checked for
see.
that.
So,
So it's not considered contributing.
okay.
It's in the historic district, but it doesn't have a contributing structure at this point.
But
So
if
does that mean
someone
it
wants
can
to
never
build
have a
on it-
contributing structure? It means that they can apply and they just have to know that they're applying?
Well, no, it means if it's vacant, as I understand it, if somebody proposes to build a structure there, they're gonna have to follow the design guidelines.
Okay.
Yeah. But
I
it's
was
not,
only,
it's not
I
gonna
was
be
just
contributing,
curious.
'cause
I
it's-
was just curious what it meant.
that is the vacant parcel next to the community house.
I know that the fire department, I mean, nothing happens quickly. So I know that there's been a 5-year discussion about something to do with the firehouse.
Well,
I don't know what it is.
Just as a
but-
matter of timing, the initial suggestion and work for creating a historic district possibility for Bridgehampton started 5 years ago.
Oh, that's interesting. That's funny. I'm
So
sure
it's taken that
no-
long. COVID had something to
Yes.
do
No,
with it.
they
too.
have nothing, their fire department is absolutely ample, the size of it. It's just, it's not landmarked, or it's a big contributor to the community. So I was just curious why, I know it's not visually anything,
Mm.
but it's important to the community. So culturally, it's something. That's my-
So with that, I think we can pass on to the ordinary agenda.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank- That's it. Oh, Bowers first, yes, yeah. We have a demolition application for 1 Bowers Lane in Watermill. This is the location here. It's a triangular piece of property. We are familiar with the neighborhood because it is right across the street from 14 Flying Point Road, where we have a landmarked house. The house is, this is County Route 39 at the bottom here with a yellow outline. Very touchy keyboard here. The house is given an AYB of 1830, which is inaccurate.
Aha.
The property was sold by the town, the trustees of the proprietors of the town, in 1865. So there was no house there at the time. Possible the house could have been moved someplace else, but I doubt that that is what occurred. The property was bought in 1865 by one Fanny Wilkinson, and she is noted on a excuse me, noted on a map. Susan Sherry Clark sent me a series of maps associated with her Flying Point research, and because the maps also encompass that particular area, let me see where did that go? Unfortunately, I've lost the series of maps, but the map shows for 1873 Beers, F. Wilkinson, and by census reference for the period of time you find out it's Fanny Wilkinson. Later on, 1894 map, it's William Wilkinson, W. Wilkinson, at the site where the house is. The son. The son had worked as a farm laborer in 1870 or so on a local farmer named Halsey, located on David White's Lane. And later on, as a mature person, was listed as a carpenter for the period of time he lived there. Where the Wilkinsons came from is unknown. I thought maybe there was a candidate family earlier on in New Jersey that had migrated out, but cannot verify that particular thing. In 1900, the Wilkinsons, William Wilkinson, turned the property over to his wife. I think probably he died shortly thereafter, so it may have been in contemplation of his some kind of illness. And in 1900, Kate Wilkinson sold it to Edna Diamond, who was associated with the family of Charles Conklin Diamond on Flying Point Road. And the house in 1902 has a name associated with it on a Belcher Hyde map called Mrs. Stanion, and can find nothing in any records, census, or land records or otherwise for Mrs. Stanion, and it might have been a scrivener's error that mapmaker's error that might have obscured it, since it had so recently become possessed by the Diamond family. Or maybe there was a Diamond marriage to some other person who was temporarily there. In any case, the Diamond family connection is sustained. The house appears to have been rented for a period of time and then occupied by a daughter, Edna Diamond Boyd, married to Harold Boyd. Harold Boyd was associated with a bank, Bridgehampton Bank, for many years. And they lived in that house, a rather small house as it exists there. So, with respect to that, respect to the age of the house, some of the age of the house is incorrect. The house is small exterior. I took a picture tonight, and what did I do with that picture? I thought I might have it here someplace. Oh, I did have the maps too, but to me, it's a mixed judgment. It is an older house. It was an AKRF. Identified as Watermill 1 in AKRF, and it noted that the house had a kind of eccentric dormer, off-centered dormer in the picture of it. Let me see if I can get a oblique here. Yeah, this is the house. There is also on the property a lot of temporary storage structures that have been there for quite a period of time. And I noticed that some property enforcement action was associated with the property some time back. This pickup tonight was covered with canvas on it. There are red flags all around the property. These are storage units behind the building as well, I believe. So, the house to me did not seem to be, when I looked at it, to be more than a plain and simple workman's cottage from the 19th century without great distinction, very plain in character. I think AKRF kind of noted it because the assessors AYB of 1830 made it stand out a bit more as an older house rather than being 1865, 1868, someplace in there.
Any thoughts on it having been moved there, that it's an older house that was moved to that property? You've done nothing on that?
Did not find any.
When the Diamonds bought the property from Hildreth and
They-
built the house that was just recently landmarked, was that house the structure that stood prior to that?
This house appears to be there since, as I said, 1865 or so.
Right, I'm just saying that the earlier maps, like 1858, show a house.
No,
It shows where the landmarked house that you just landmarked was.
right.
But they sold the property in 1860 from the Hildreth family, right? Is it possible that the house that's on the 1858 map is actually
But it
that?
belonged to the Wilkinsons.
But it was the original house and then got moved to One Bower, and somebody then bought it when the Diamond family built the house, it was just landmarked.
Well,
Is that-
that is a theory that
There's
could be
just-
the
there's-
case, yeah.
There's one little piece of paper in the, I didn't bring it with me, in the GIS where a building inspector went to the house, and he said that it was post and beam inside.
Mhm. Well, that I didn't see.
Yeah, it's
that's
in one of
inform-
those little permit things, so I'll pull it, just to have, I don't know, I've been kind of working on a
Well,
a theory about this house, and I mean, I understand there's lots of things going on here, but, just the history, just to know how old it is and all that, prior to its final outcome, but.
right, well, let me just see if we look at the application.
I don't have my,
Um,
not my computer.
Let me see.
Yeah,
The
do you want-
application itself
Here's
doesn't
the
have
applica-
anything
The
that would
application
show.
doesn't have it.
Go in,
Can we go on to GIS?
can you get on the GIS? I don't have my home, this is not
I'm
my,
not sure.
Yeah.
my daughter's computer.
I'm not sure
Um,
how I get into it. I can get into it, but I don't know how. Do you know what I would look up?
You need your username and password and stuff.
Yeah, I have that.
Well, this was the photograph I was looking for before.
Yes.
And the application I thought had photographs in it, but I
It does.
lost in my,
It does.
Not great ones. Does.
it got shuffled away into some
There
other
you
file,
go.
I think. So. Does it demonstrate post and beam structure? Could you?
It hasn't got great pictures.
I didn't I would, thought I would have noticed if there was post and beam structure inside. Yeah, yeah. Let me see if I can get that.
This is what they sent. On the GIS, in one of the drop-down menus, identifying the property, the building inspector noted in his
Yeah,
notes.
it's not been uploaded to,
So what are we saying about it?
well, I think the question is if it had some older historic value, that might be an argument, a much stronger argument for saying that it should be preserved in some way. Susan, who ordinarily would have looked at it, suggested that we object and recommend that it might be used as a carriage house exception for another structure on the property. We don't, I did see some red flags being put out, staked out on the property as last week to some degree. So some things apparently are in work. I don't know if there is a new buyer or anything along that line.
Is that whole parcel, that whole triangular parcel, is it one parcel or?
It's
the-
one parcel.
It's
yeah.
one parcel?
Yeah.
It seems like it's large enough that,
It's about 3 acres, I think.
then it should be capable
yeah.
of having an accessory or a carriage house.
3.8 acres.
Yeah, And this is even kind of down towards one corner of the triangle, so
Mm-hmm.
would necessarily even have to be moved.
Yeah.
I think when I looked at the footprint on the assessor's data sheet, it doesn't have a full cellar underneath it either. It's, it's
Does it have a round brick cellar, perhaps?
does it have?
A round brick cellar,
Oh,
like
that
we
I don't
find
know.
now.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes those are characterized as not full cellars.
So, well, what I would suggest that since it is of some antiquity,
Mhm.
with potentially an origin, we can speculate about the origin there, that we do object and suggest that it be considered for a possible carriage house exception or renovated on whatever new development takes place on the property. Does that sound like a reasonable condition?
Yep.
Okay, all right, so that's the way we will go with that. This one was also one of those things, got mixed up in the agenda-making
Mhm.
cycle that we had, so. Okay. With that, thanks for the information.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
as much, could be valuable speculation to be checked out at some point.
Okay, have a nice night.
All right,
Thank
bye-bye,
you.
Julie.
Gotta go do my taxes.
Quick.
Getting a little late.
Okay, let's see the agenda here. The next item is 9 Yacht Club Drive, Remsenburg. This is, I think, is this to lift a secondary building, elevate it on the west side of the property? So.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Bill, you want to
Uh-huh.
take
Okay.
over? Yeah.
And just, should I recuse myself because I'm a member of this? Okay.
Just, you're not the Commodore, are you?
No, no, just an ordinary member.
Okay.
So the work here is already underway. Building permit has already been issued without Landmarks Board review. The structure's already been elevated and a new handicap ramp has been constructed. The larger building is not mentioned in this application, is known as the West Hampton Yacht Squadron Clubhouse, and arrived on the site in 1969. The smaller subject building is known as the Junior Yacht Club, or also known as the Andon Graham Sailing Center, and was constructed in 1941. The current building permit was issued in September of 2022 to elevate the existing Junior Yacht Club, interior alterations including accessible features and the handicap accessible ramp. The application provided information about the proposed construction, but did not provide architectural drawings. The subject property is not identified in the AKRF and is not identified in the town's 2004 historical profiles of Eastport, Spionk, Remsenburg, and West Hampton. The 1873 map shows South Country Road, but does not show any of the smaller roads heading south towards this lot. The 1902 and 1916 historic maps continue to show no roads in the area where Spionk Shore Road, Halsey Road, or Yacht Club Drive will eventually be opened. There are 6 historic resources located on Shore Road and Halsey Road to the north of the property. All of these properties are reported to date to no earlier than 1920s, suggesting that the roads were opened at some point in the 1920s. The local subdivision known as Spionk Shore, containing both Spionk Shore Road and Halsey Roads, was approved in 1926, again confirming the timeline for the 1920s. The mass appraisal information is a little confusing as to which buildings they're talking about. They do have one building as 1938, although through some of the research, definitely the subject building was built in 1941, perhaps late 40, early 41. The yacht squadron was founded in 1890 in West Hampton Beach, which was then known as Ketchiabonic. And at that time, Moriches and Shinnecock Bays were both freshwater bays. I never knew that. I found that sort of odd, but I guess until the inlets were opened, they were freshwater. After 1903, the West Hampton Yacht Squadron shifted its activities to a small clubhouse at the foot of Club Lane in Remsenburg. In 1922, a yacht club building was constructed at the south end of Spionk Shore Road. A canal was also dredged, and the clubhouse was destroyed by the Great Hurricane of 1938. I did find an article in some of the in the historic Suffolk Historic Newspaper's website, 1938 edition of The Advance. The opening line is Remsenburg Yacht Club building lost. Only brick from the chimney remains. Several houses swept away. Spionk conductor was on a derailed train that was derailed in Quayog during the storm. In 1939, West Hampton Country Club gave up the Spionk Point Station, as it was known, and it was separated from the country club, was renamed the West Hampton Yacht Squadron. In 1941, land was purchased to the west of the original site, and a small clubhouse, the subject structure, was constructed. It was designed by local resident Perry Edwards. He was of Garden City and Main Street, Remsenburg. He was a graduate of Princeton, civil engineer, and the former secretary and treasurer of the New York Telephone Company. The list of notable past and present local residents that are affiliated with the West Hampton Yacht Squadron is quite lengthy. In 1941, in an edition of The Advance, the West Hampton Yacht Squadron planned season new house building. And it goes on to say, the building of the new clubhouse on Moriches Bay at Spionk Shore is getting along nicely, and it is hoped that it will be ready for occupancy for the Independence weekend. So thereby telling us that the building was built in 1941. Sailboat racing continued until it was curtailed during World War II. In 1955, 2 additional pieces of property to the east were purchased to increase the size of the property. In 1969, a larger West Hampton Yacht Squadron clubhouse building was purchased from Frederick Jagger Jr. It arrived in 2 pieces by barge on Moriches Bay. It had originally been known as the Cedar Beach House and was located at the end of Jagger Lane in West Hampton. As far back as 1897, in the local papers, the Cedar Beach House dock is mentioned in local papers as the starting point of a 10-mile triangular-shaped sailing course for the West Hampton Yacht Squadron. The age of the structure is currently unknown. I only learned today that it was originally at the end of Jagger Lane. I'm going to do a little more research and see if I can find out when that structure was originally done. It arrived on this site in 1969. The previous smaller clubhouse, circa 1941, then became the Subject Junior Yacht Club. In 1945 editions of the Country Review, in the legal section, it often mentions Frederick R. Jager, West Hampton Beach, doing business as Cedar Beach House and Cottages. Unfortunately, we don't know whether this building was there as far back as 1897 or even in 1945, but I'll do a little more research and see if I can find that. During the current construction, the design of the original construction or structure has changed, has not changed dramatically, and is still very recognizable. I don't believe that the Landmarks Board should object to the construction application, as the work is required to meet the FEMA regulations and to meet the Americans with Disabilities Act standards. And there is a great picture in there of the building sitting on the barge just off the beach. There it is, yep, in 1969. But how old that building is, we don't know. But that's not the subject building, although it is on the site with the subject building. Yeah, so
We
there,
cer-
there it is in its two parts, joined together with a small section in between. But again, we don't, at the moment, know the age of that structure.
Creative readaptation,
Yes.
Yep.
and with a certain elegant balance to it too, you know.
Yeah. Yep, so this is the building before it was lifted.
This is the junior yacht club.
Yes, so this is the Junior Yacht Club building, yep. So then there's these renderings, we're on the West Hampton Yacht Squadron website, showing, these are of course just renderings, drawings of it, showing it as it would be when it was lifted. So the building is still very recognizable, but at this point it shouldn't flood. And they did add ramps to the north side of it, although there was a ramp there, they've enlarged it so that they can meet ADA requirements. Yep. So here it is.
Currently under work.
Yep, currently under construction.
And quite a bit of solar power on the roofs.
Yes, which was added in 2010, I believe.
Yep. All right.
So your recommendation is no objection to the
Mhm.
proposed work and actual work that's being undertaken?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Is there any comments from fellow board members? And hearing none, we'll leave it at that. And would you do the filing on it for
Yes.
the response? Okay, thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
And as you can see, okay. Next agenda matter is 127 Springville Road, Hampton Bays. I did send out a brief report on it. The 127. This property was before us about 2 years ago, about 2 years ago almost, I think June of 2021. And let me blow this up so you can see it. At that time, this was just a simple gabled, basically one story. And what the proposed renovation was to put on second floor additions, which we had no objection to at the time. We did an oral review at it. It's not identified in any of the previous surveys. This is a picture from March. It's still in under construction. And basically, a former owner gave an affidavit for a certificate of occupancy indicating the house was built in 1933 by her parents, and it was confirmed by newspaper accounts at the time. It does not seem to have any significant historical connections to persons or events or to architectural style, and no longer any integrity for any lack of style it might have had in the first place. But the neighborhood kind of developed at the same time as this house in the early 1930s. It was kind of in the boondocks a little bit of Hampton Bays during that period of time. The subsequent post-war development led to a very rapid building throughout the Hampton Bays neighborhoods there. But there's no historic context of other structures either close by. So I would recommend no objection to the proposed renovation, which is to do some roofing and redo the accessory building in the rear. Any comments from my fellow board members? If not, I will follow up with that kind of report back to the building department then. Okay. With that disposed of, we can go to the next item on the agenda, which is 2803 Noyak Road, Noyak, which is a renovation of a two-story 1940 or 1940 cottage. Did you have any
Yeah.
chance to look at it?
I was there a year or two ago. Must have been a different owner, because the place had been started. It was in all kinds of disarray, like somebody stopped in the middle of what they were doing. I don't know whether they got a stop work order or not, but I did notice, without even seeing this application, that the site has been completely cleared of all of the old plantings and whatnot. There was a small vestibule that was attached to this house in the front. I don't know if it was there from the beginning. It looked even older than 1940, although it might have been 1940, but it's been removed. The main block of the house is all that exists. You see that little vestibule on the left? That's gone. They replaced a window where that, you can see next to the vestibule, just to the right of that. They took the deck off the back. They want to add, I didn't see anything with it historic about it when I looked at it the first time. And now just everything has been ripped off of it. All those decks are gone. They want to extend the first floor. Now that they've removed all the vegetation, you can see that this house has a incredible view of Noyak Bay and whatnot. And they want to add a one-story addition on the first floor and then have a deck. There's a deck, second floor deck, but there was nothing below it except another deck. But they want to have add it to the building and then have a deck on top of that second floor part. I didn't see any reason to object.
No.
Okay. Yeah, just from looking at the application and looking at the placement, Noyak Road is also a very busy road because it takes east and westbound traffic going towards town of East Hampton through that area.
Very busy.
And so if there's no problem from anyone, okay, I'll file the paperwork on it then, Jeff.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Whoever's doing it now seems to really know what they're doing. They've got a sign up that says who they are, the construction company and whatnot. And the site looks night and day from what it was before.
there's been a lot of redoing of the cottages down in that
Yeah.
area of Noyak as people seek to get up higher and get better
Well,
views.
I mean, the property does drop off dramatically. Like where the pool is, it has to be a good 20 feet below from where you come into the property.
Okay, so the next is 47A Lynn Avenue, which was slightly confusing. A former owner had once applied for a subdivision of the property separate the shoreline house from the roadside house. That's there. This is the property. It sits on the shores of Shinnecock Bay here. Just to give you a feel for this. This is the Montauk Highway Bridge and Canoe Place Road down to Lynn Avenue, located then where the orange outline is. And it has two houses. And the application is for redoing the shoreline house without changes to the roadside cottage. Somehow, a map was filed and the roadside lot was 47A and the shoreline house lot was 47B, but the town's records do not show a subdivision ever being finally approved. So, but nevertheless, the application is registered as 47A. The report is very similar. A former owner reported their parents' ownership of it and the building of it in 1945. And that was confirmed by a newspaper article. The family name that bought it in 1945 was Benson. So the idea of a 1940 AYB makes sense for that property. There have been various renovations. If you look at the visual character of the property, you can see that it has had a fair amount of change over the years from 1940. Windows, added kitchens on the first floor. Let me see if I can blow it up. A lot of different features altered to what would have been a 1940 fairly small house to begin with there. So I don't see much of historic character and connection with either owners or persons involved with the house. It's been altered significantly. The only possible matter of historic interest is it once was associated with Judge Wauchope Lynn, who owned that shore of Shinnecock Bay, and he, his brother, and I believe his sister had 3 mansions along that western shore. So Lynn Avenue is there. One of the other mansions was called Lincliffe, and a major east-west street in that area is Lincliffe Road. And I forget what the other Lynn property was called, but they were all demolished as redevelopment of Hampton Bays began to take place. Judge Wauchope Lynn was a big politician in New York City. I believe he was an alderman maybe at some point as well, but was part of the kind of political establishment that settled in good ground, Hampton Bays, turn of the century, and began to attract the real estate development interest in Hampton Bays at that period of time. So I recommend no concern here and no objection, and if there's no problem with that, I'll file a report. Okay, so that's the way that will go. Next item on the agenda is 39 Central Avenue, East Mug.
I circulated a report about this, I think it was a couple weeks ago now.
Yes, very early on.
Yes. This was probably one of the first homes actually built on Central Avenue. Central Avenue was not opened in this hamlet till some point in the early 1900s. It's not shown on the 1873 map or the 1902 map, but it is shown on the 1916 map. The house in question has an AYB of 1915, which seems to be about right for it. The only identification I have as to a former historic owner of the house was a J.R. Nugent, which the Nugent family still exists out in the general area on Vale Avenue, I believe. I looked for, in the historic newspapers, for a J.R. Nugent, and in the Long Island surname database, and in the records for the Oakville Cemetery, and could not find any reference to a J.R. Nugent in those sources. What is present on the property is the main dwelling for which construction is proposed, and then there's also a cottage out back for which no work is proposed at this time. And then there's also a shed, which is a very recent structure that is going to be moved to the back of the property. So that's, and then there is also a proposed accessory structure, which is going to be a workshop, also proposed for the back side of the property. Much of the property is actually visible from Central Avenue because there's not a lot of trees or other hedges or anything like that that would obstruct the view of the house. I don't know, Ed, if you can scroll down a little bit there to some of the pictures, which they tell 1,000 words here. So that's the front of the house. It faces Central Avenue. There's no particular changes proposed for the front of the house other than to repair some of the rot on the front porch. If you could scroll down to the next picture there, the little shed there on the right-hand side of the center photo, that's going to be moved to the back of the property. And then the cottage on the picture at the bottom, there's no work proposed for that. If we go back to the middle picture right there, just the middle picture, if you can see the garage, just down one a little bit. Yeah, there you go. You can see the garage there. That is proposed to be ungaraged. The garage door, which is non-historic, will be removed and replaced with a couple of windows. So if you could scroll to the next page. Yeah, there you go.
So it is attached to the house?
Yes, it is attached to the house. The original volume, based on the 1916 map, appears to be a large volume on the left there, and then part of the little doghouse that sticks out the back and connects to what is now the garage. The garage appears to be a more recent structure, does not show on the 1916 map. The chimney that's stuck on the side of the house there is apparently non-original. It looks like the big brick chimney coming out of the little doghouse there is the original chimney for the house. And what's going to happen here is the middle volume, the connecting volume there, is going to be demolished and replaced with a newly built volume. And if you could go down to the next, yeah, you can see the change there. That's going to be rebuilt in the middle. The entire exterior, by the way, is clad in what appears to be asbestos shingles. It's proposed to replace those with cedar shakes, which will be an improvement. And if you can go down to the next page, Ed. Yes, this is the side that's fascinating for this house. This is the side that faces north, or northish, if you will. It's right up against the property line. You can see the volume in the middle has two little sheds now that are attached to the original connecting volume. They have really strange roof lines. One piece appears to be rather settled, and it looks like a recipe for massive leaks. This is all going to be demolished and replaced with a single volume that should be less leak prone. The windows are going to be replaced in that middle volume, and the windows in what is the garage on the left-hand side there will also be replaced. No work is proposed for the main original volume of the house, which is the one on the right. It has a really odd bump out on the second story there. It's kind of difficult to see. I don't know if you can zoom in on the photo, Ed, but there's like this room or something that is stuck on to the second story. I can see the lovely roofs. Yes, over a little bit more, Okay, there's something odd going on there with that picture, Ed. Oh, perfect, there you go. Just one more.
Bathroom?
Oh, we needed a closet.
Yeah, my guess is it's a bathroom, just sort of stuck out the side on the second story, supported by some posts underneath. It's really, there's no change proposed for that. So, bottom line here is I think that the proposed renovations will improve certainly the appearance of the structure and eliminate the asbestos shingles, which will be a blessing, and probably eliminate what appears to be a likely significant leaking situation on the roof. This is identified as a historical resource in the town survey. It's EQ 40, and it was also identified in the Hamlet Heritage Area Report. So I see no reason at all to object to this application. I think it will result in some improvements, and the original historic volume that's really visible from the street is not going to be changed.
Not touching the windows or anything?
No,
I noticed
not
in
on the original
In the
volume.
garage, on the one side, they had traditional windows. On the other side, they have these modern slits, those
Yeah,
gun
right.
shooting out.
Well, this
Nobody
is,
can ever get out of their bedroom because they can't get up to the window.
yeah, well, I think that's what it is probably that's a bedroom side. This appears to be a multi-family
Okay.
situation. There were, I think, 3 electric meters on the side of the house,
Okay,
so, at any rate.
so much for architectural integrity.
So the
I
recommendation is
no
to-
objection.
No objection, so, and would
be
you
happy to do-
undertake the response then,
Yes,
Stephanie?
will do.
Okay, thank you. We can Go back and check 95 Church Lane, Bridgehampton. And miracle of miracles, as I was trying to figure out how to get pictures of 95 Church Lane before this meeting, Martha drops a whole bunch of photographs of 95 Church Lane in my email box.
Awesome. Find the application, though. Did you all get an application?
Yes.
I only saw it, I thought, and I still don't have it, so carry on.
Oh, you didn't get the application?
I cannot find it.
Oh,
I saw it on the agenda, and I thought, well, I'll pop down and take some,
Well-
and have a look. So,
Let's go to 95 Church Lane. And just to work, kind of, they started the process here. The house project is to lift the house, put it on a new foundation. The foundation will be a bigger footprint, and a one-story L will be added to with a second story, among other things. Let me just get the photographs here that Martha sent along. This happens to be the neighborhood ball field owned by the fire department in the community on Church Lane. This is the house. The plan is to take off this front stoop as well, put an addition on this side, put a second story over here, lining up roof lines and some of the architectural features of the roof, trying to match them. The new foundations will allow for a full basement with window wells for natural light to go into the full basement for whatever recreational or other uses the space may have for them. Let me just go through the pictures too. The slice of land is about 4/10 of an acre, a fairly small slice. Borders on two roads that are converging on both sides of the house at an intersection. This is the rear lawns, the little lawn space. Both the house has two driveways, one on each road for the house. This is one of them there. Again, picture of the house. This was in AKRF, which suggested that this steep roof volume was more of a 1880s, 1890s Gothic style, while the one-story portion of the house was added possibly in the early 20th century from their judgment of the look at this house, noting that there was a certain stylistic difference, and you can see it in the windows certainly, as well as the front door to the house. This house doesn't have any information on when it was constructed. The AYB is 1850, but I did not find that house on the Chase map. It was not on the 1873 map, the Beers 1873, and not on the 1894 map for Bridgehampton. However, in 1902, there is a house marked there as A. Winters, which, searching through census data and so on, and some newspaper reference, indicated that the name was Hannah Winters, and possibly A was the abbreviation for Anna, although I believe her middle name was, the initial was A. But in any case, in checking the property transactions, Hannah Winners bought it from the farmer Charles and Sarah King, who would have been the next door neighbors. And that's apparent in the 1900 census. The 1916 Belcher Hyde map then has the house labeled for A. Edwards, who is Arthur Moore Edwards, who lives there for the next at least 40 years, because I find him in the census through 1950. So the idea that the house is 1850 is suspect, since the maps do not show a house in place there, and the property descriptions and the deed transactions indicate that the parcel was sold for $280, and doesn't indicate that there was any kind of structure involved, certainly for that kind of price. My suspicion is that the house is basically sometime between 1894 and 1902. Bridgehampton had a couple of types of houses that had Gothic revival characteristics to them, which is one of the characteristics AKRF assigned to the house. What I find in the proposed renovations is kind of consistent. They're not changing the exterior characteristics of the house. It's basically going to increase the volume of the house. I will say I think it's kind of on the smaller scale of things. Let me just get rid of some of this excess baggage here to get to that neighborhood. Okay, so this is 95 Church Lane here in Bridgehampton, just to edge it out a little bit to show you. These are the two roads, Church Lane, Hildreth Lane, that converge, and the picture of the ball field that we saw before from Martha is there. The increase in scale of the house is modest in terms of the increase in size. Many of the houses in this neighborhood have either been demolished for mega houses or added to in larger volumes. So this house is not going to be treated that way, and probably that's a reflection of the size of the parcel of the land it sits on, which it still will remain fairly small.
You see it from the front or the back. I mean, it sits in a lovely little group of houses. So are they changing the view of it?
Are they changing the view of it? Well, yeah, there is some architectural alteration. Let me get the application here. That I had. And you can see some of the, first of all, you can see this, the difference in size is relatively small in terms of the footprint that is increasing. This is the new size, and you can see that the existing form of the house is not much smaller. Problem is that the drawings came in different sizes. So this will be looking at the house. This is a new addition here. This is the second addition, second floor addition to the one-story L here. It will be enlarged, in effect, the L will be enlarged. There will be roof dormers put on the top of the house, so that will change the look a little bit. It will alter that. I mean, it's kind of hard to decipher the black and white line drawings here. This will be the rear. There'll be a shed dormer on the second floor of the L for the house. This is again a new portion of the house that would be you're looking at. This is looking from the Hildreth Avenue side. And there'll be a shed dormer on this side as well. So that's the limit of the drawings there. The house is in, I believe it's in AKRF. I have the excerpt there. They said it was constructed circa 1870, but that clearly was not checked out. They reference the map of 1916 with Arthur Edwards, but did not reference the earlier maps, which they would have found it was not there. So I'm okay with it myself. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts about the application. Well, if not, then I will send back a no objection response to it and allow things to go forward. Thank you, Martha, again for the miracle of the photographs today. Okay, with that, I think we are, the 51 Peconic Avenue is a null item on our agenda. The certificate of appropriateness was already dealt with. 76 Main Street, West Hampton Beach, have had no further communication on it, and Stephanie, you haven't
No, I
picked
haven't
up
had
any?
either. No,
Okay.
I have no outreach from them.
149 South Country Road.
There's been some interesting discussion that I've been having with the CPF director on this. She's new in her job, and she has a certain level of hesitancy with moving forward with developing an easement offer without the property being, fully landmarked. We've made, the recommendation to the town board to landmark, but have not moved forward beyond that, pending an easement offer that the owner would find acceptable.
Did I understand that maybe they had commissioned an evaluation of an appraisal for the easement?
There had been a prior appraisal when this matter was last on the table several years ago. But there is needed a new appraisal, which means CPF has to, be authorized to expend funds for that new appraisal. And that has not moved forward yet, according to my discussions with Jackie Fenlon. So at present, I understand she's going to be consulting with Lisa Combrink, the former CPF manager, about how these situations were handled in the past to get a greater level of comfort with this particular process. I have emphasized to her that it's important that we be able to offer people this parallel track process, if you will, of landmarking and developing an easement offer at the same time, because it makes it more attractive to certain people to consider landmarking their homes if they know that they have an easement offer on the table. And it would, I think, represent a change in how this board approaches people who might be interested in landmarking if we can't follow that particular parallel process. So I've asked Jackie, after she has her discussions with Lisa, to get back to me with how they are willing to move forward on this process in the future. So stay tuned, and I'm hoping that she could see her way to moving forward in this parallel track manner.
Okay. All right. So the Historic District application review is done. Martha, did you want to make any brief comments about the historic building survey?
So I spoke to the gentleman, Richard Atkins, who is the maintenance and grounds superintendent for Southampton Stony Brook University. And with regard to the Claflin House and the windmill, which they put the pins on of the windmill up. And he was kind of forthcoming, although off the record. So they put the pins up, and now they have to take them down. They had the $500,000 grant, which they've said he spent on the structural survey and just keeping everything from falling in. So there's a huge engineer's report coming, which is why they're now taking the pins back down, because the whole thing's going to fall in. They do have a budget to do the to fix up the windmill over the next 2-3 years. The house, unfortunately, they have no need for or desire to keep. So he thinks it would be about $20 million to restore it. I didn't even get into this conversation because it was, I don't know where he picked that. And most important, they have no use for it. He says, obviously, he would love it if they'd restore it, and that campus is sort of, it's very dilapidated looking. It would be nice if they restored it. It could be a good venue for weddings. He thinks he could outsource it well, and it could be something for the town, but he doesn't want to take it up, but he would love it if we would take it up, and shows some interest in it, so he could say that there's some interest in it. And I suggested all the grants. He said, Martha, if I've got 50 committees and grants and applications to do, I wouldn't be surprised. He said they're in touch with everybody because it's the State University of New York. There's yet loads of complications to dealing with it. And it's not their money, it's the State University. It has to get allocated that way. So we wrote to him, and I sent Ed some article that the Assemblyman Teal had put in the paper, gotten in the paper. And I took some pictures of it currently, so just we had a record for the date. Mm-hmm. And now, just to say we were interested, and could he keep us informed of anything? I'm not sure he will or not. And then I'll go forward. I'll go to the Assemblyman. Ed suggested I go to Mr. Teal, I think his name was, and tell him we're interested and explain we've written to Stony Brook and see if we can agitate a bit that way. So in the next 2 to 3 years, the windmill should be done, or should be started. Hopefully we'll see this engineer's report. I can't imagine it's not public. seems a lot of money to have spent.
Yes.
So, but I didn't think that was our business. But
Well,
there we are. That's where we are.
Well, good. Thanks for making the visit and communications with the
Thanks for helping me. with the
supervising
letter.
authority on the buildings at the campus there. I think there are subtle opportunities that can be exploited down the road that would allow for more attention and more focus for the care of those buildings, but we'll take it as we can, step by step, so to speak. Certified local government activity, Vicky is not here, but basically, I think most of us, did we get a chance to listen to Linda Mackey on her
Yes.
presentation? It was informative. I think a lot of us found some aspects of it enlightening, even though some things were also already part of our experience. So,
Yeah, but it was helpful to see that there is a framework that's bigger than us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was good.
I missed that because I completely spaced out and didn't realize until the next day that it was the night before. Is there any way
She
that,
sent it to us. Did you not get a copy of it? Okay, I'll see if I can
Okay.
forward it on to you, because she sent the whole, the
Yeah.
PowerPoint presentation to us.
I was looking and I was trying to, because I thought that's what she had said she was going to do.
Yeah, it came from Vicky, I think.
And didn't we record it too?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
recorded it as, yes.
Yes.
it was to
Yes,
go
It was
to the
recorded.
cloud, or
Yeah, it was recorded, I think, in two separate pieces, because there was a handoff at one point there in the presentation. But yes, it was all being recorded, so it should be accessible somewhere.
Yeah.
we'll have
It
to.
runs just a little
keep
over
track
an
of
hour.
that.
No, what I just mean is, like,
Yeah.
where do I even look?
I'm not sure where, but
Okay,
Well, you got sent it. Look on the fourth and fourth
okay.
for some of it. And this is,
In the, outside of that report, is there anything else to be brought before the Landmarks
Which one?
Board tonight?
That was before the presentation.
If there is nothing else, then the meeting is adjourned.
that's what she sent us.
And thank you very
That's
much.
who the woman was.
Yeah.
And